Hello, good evening, folks. How are you doing today? I'm sure you all had a fantastic Christmas and New Year's celebrations. Plenty of celebrations all over the world. People were glad to be able to see a new year, 2021, because 2020 had been quite a year. A lot of people have passed away due to the COVID-19 infections all around the world. United States of America having the highest number, of course. Day on day, they kept on breaking records in terms of the numbers of deaths that they recorded and the numbers of infections. But there seems to be some hope on the horizon because they've discovered vaccines in different parts of the world. So South Korea, you have the United States, you have the United Kingdom. We even made a joke about the United Kingdom at the last show, where Matt Hancock, the health secretary for the United Kingdom, was actually saying that the United Kingdom had made history because Britain was the first country to approve the English vaccine. So, yeah, that's on a lighter note, but COVID-19 has been a very serious issue and has caused a lot of disruptions, business-wise, health-wise, family-wise. A lot of mental health issues have come to the fore simply because a lot of people have been under the lockdown and they've not been able to move around. Speaking of mental health issues, whilst a lot of people were celebrating, a lot of you, because of course, if you're watching this, that means you actually went through the holiday celebrations in high spirits, and you're still in high spirits. A family in Dublin 15, in the Republic of Ireland, was shattered. A very, very tragic story. We'll be right back after this, and we'll talk about the death, the fatal shooting of Judge Nkencho in the Republic of Ireland. We'll be right back. Hello once again. Shortly before we went on that short commercial break, we mentioned that there was a fatal shooting in Dublin on the 30th of December in the afternoon in broad daylight. It was a shocker, a massive, massive shocker. And why was it a shocker? First, I'll start with a little background. Last year, 2020, we had the Black Lives Matter where George Floyd was killed in broad daylight by a couple of policemen whilst one of them knelt on his neck, and then the last thing on his lips were my mother, my mother, my mother. A full-grown man, and then he died. The United States went up into a chaos, in short, let me not say into an opera. It was absolute chaos. People came out on the streets. I started talking about the amount of people that had been killed. As far back as the famous Diallo, of whom Wyclef even sang a song, I mentioned about 27 shots and all that. And then up to the likes of Breonna Taylor as well. So there have been a lot of people, actually looking into it and asking questions. How come you have a disproportionate amount of Black people being killed in different countries, especially in Western Europe? Whilst all of that was going on, those of us that lived in the Republic of Ireland were actually like, this can never happen in the Republic of Ireland. Why? Because Angada Sikana are so well trained, are so polite, that you hardly ever hear of them shooting or killing anybody. It's almost impossible. Why? Because they were so disciplined, so disciplined. They're polite, they're disciplined, they interact with you just like any other person. But Ireland had had a brief history of racism. A lot of people have complained about several things happening to them whilst in the Republic of Ireland, but it has never been a really, really major issue. But all of a sudden, stuff has started to happen. In the late 90s, there was quite an influx of Africans into the Republic of Ireland simply because the Republic of Ireland was open, they were friendly, and they were accepting people in for different reasons. A lot of people claimed refugee status. A lot of those people that claimed refugee status are actually citizens of the Republic of Ireland at this point in time. Now, the African immigrant population in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, is about 60,000. That's roughly about 1.5% of the entire population. Every society has its challenges, yes, we know. The Republic of Ireland, of course it does. Or is it as rampant as other parts of the world? Well, we can't tell you that yes, and we can't tell you that no, because so many people have made complaints and nothing has happened. So many people have made complaints and people looked at them and said, look, you know what, just get over it, move on with your life and just do your thing. That has been going on. But apparently, if you look behind me, you can see it seems as if the cracks in the wall have finally appeared. A young man by the name of Judge Nkencho was fatally shot in front of his house. His mother was there. His sister was there. I don't know who else was there. Those are the two that we have reliable reports that they were actually present when he was shot. For the entire Republic of Ireland, that was a shock. Why? Like I said earlier on, it's very, very rare for anybody to be shot and killed in the Republic of Ireland. Now, a former presidential candidate, his name is Kevin Sharkey, he also made a statement in that respect, but we'll get to that a bit later on. The question is, what truly happened? There are quite a lot of varying reports on how it all started and everything, but it seems George went to a local store called a Spar somewhere within his locality in Dublin 15, and he had an altercation with the store manager. Whatever happened after the altercation, nobody can precisely tell you, but it was said that the police and Garda Síochána, that's the Irish police, were called in. The police were called in and they followed Judge to his house. Now that's a strange thing. They actually followed Judge to his house. So between the local Spar and Judge's house, which, if you ask me, could not have been less than a mile. Most likely more. And why do I say that? We do have a couple of videos. Luckily, we live in the age where people use their mobile phones for different sorts of things. And, of course, the most prominent thing people do with their mobile phones nowadays, apart from making calls and sending text messages, is recording videos and taking pictures. So somewhere along the line, there's some footage. 1, 2, 3, 4, who knows? But there are quite a few of some of the things that actually transpired between George and the police. We're going to be showing you some of those videos. And what we're going to appeal to you, please, is this. Try as much as possible to be as unbiased as you can be as regards all the reports that are out there. Try not to get unduly sentimental. Try not to get unduly emotional. Yes, we know it is an emotional thing. We know it's an emotional time, especially for the family of George, a young man of 27 who has gone down just 2 days into a brand new year. He never got to see the year. He never became 28 years old. So we know how emotional, how deeply disturbing that is for all the parties concerned, family and friends particularly, because apparently he happened to be a popular boy, or a popular man, because he was a man at 27, in the Dublin 15 area. Why? He was judged a bit famous or a bit popular because he grew up there. He knew practically everybody who were his contemporaries and his peers. And then he himself had been through a prior very traumatic experience where a friend of his was stabbed to death in front of him. Could that be part of the issues, the underlying issues where George is concerned? But we can't tell you because we're not social care workers, we're not experts in that field. But we do know that he was a disturbed young man at some point, but he never had any criminal record from all the facts that have been put forward so far. Now, I will apologize that I am also saying don't be emotional, but it's a bit of an emotional situation for me and myself because I can't imagine what any parent or siblings would feel like losing a member of their family at this point in time. Deeply, deeply, deeply disturbed. Now, we're going to go to one of the videos of George, his interaction with the police, probably the beginning of the entire thing, except for where he had an issue at the spa with the manager of that store. We'll be right back shortly after this.
He's got loose to go back for his. Yeah, they're telling us to go back and all, what? Ah, look at him.
Look at him bottling it.
Look. Come on, brother. Look at him. Ah, look at him out the guy, the boys.
Oh, no, yeah. He's just walking off.
He's looking fucked up. Yeah, watch the joints now.
Look at this. I was just following him.
So, that was a video being taken by bystanders, people who were watching, doing their own thing, and then they just saw there was something going on with somebody and the police. And then they switched on their phone cameras and they started to record. Now, from what we can see, even though it was a bit blurry looking that far, you could see that there was really no violent interaction or violent altercation between George and the police. He was probably saying some stuff, probably mouthing off, whatever. Young people do that all the time. I mean, my younger brother still mouths off at me once in a while. There's nothing wrong with that. It's no cause for violence. It's just a discussion, it's just talk, just empty talk. But we could see that he was able to say quite a bit, and there were quite a few police cars parked there. And then after he said whatever he was going to say, he actually took a stroll away from them. He didn't jog, he didn't run. He was just walking away from the police. Now, I'm going to play that footage again because I want you to get actual impact of this when we show the actual video of the shooting in itself. So I'm going to play that video again, and I want you to watch, and I want you to see how calmly he was walking away from that scene with the police. I'll be right back.
He's got loose to go back for his. Yeah, they're telling us to go back and all, what? Ah, look at him.
Look at him bottling it.
Look. Come on, brother. Look at him. Ah, look at him out the guy, the boys.
Oh, no, yeah. He's just walking off.
He's looking fucked up. Yeah, watch the joints now.
Look at this. I was just following him.
So, you've seen the video again. Now, if you listen to the comments of the chaps who were actually filming that incident, you will notice that they were saying they're actually following him. So it's not a case of they were chasing him. Or how would you explain that? A couple of police cars driving after somebody that's walking away. And like I said, it wasn't trotting, it wasn't jogging, it wasn't running. He was just walking. And they were driving after him. Calmly walking. So many questions around that in itself. Now, according to some reports, he was tasered, he was pepper sprayed, and the police said none of that worked, and that's why he was shot. Now, there were 12 policemen, armed policemen. Now, if anybody watching this is familiar with GARDAI, they're one of the most highly trained police force in the world. Yes, it's an under-policed country, but you don't have that level of crime where you need to have an overwhelming amount of policing in the Republic of Ireland. It's one of the most beautiful countries you could ever be to. Fantastic landscape, peaceful people generally. Yes, of course, you will have the odd incidents here and there, but nothing really major. Yes, Irish gangs are known to have, some of the usual stuff, but you have that in every society. But like I said, nothing overwhelming. But these guys are so well trained that even when you interact with them, you will know that they are well trained. And then they now have the armed divisions of the GARDAI. These guys are superb counter-terrorists. So I can't imagine how there'll be 12 of them armed. Well, I don't know if all of them were armed, but even if it was just one of them was armed, but how could there be 12 police officers and somebody's holding a knife? Some reports say it's a butter knife. I have no idea. Of course, we didn't let us see the evidence so far, or only much later after the investigation, because a lot of noise has been going on. So the inquiry is coming up. Even the African community has set up a panel, to probe into the matter, to interact with the authorities and try to get a fair and honest investigation into the matter. But there are some things that sometimes you have to ask yourself when things like this come up. If you go back in time and you remember the song by Wyclef Jean, where he was talking about Diallo, a man standing in the doorway, and he was shot 27 times. Yes, you heard me right. 27 times. How do you shoot a man 27 times? But anyways, it just goes to show you that some things happen and they're so blatant that you just don't need to ask too many questions. Now, I'm going to get to the point of George himself. There are reports that George, a long time ago, witnessed his young friend being stabbed. I think they were about 15 years old at that point in time. His friend had an altercation with another young lad. The young lad's father went into the house, pulled out a knife, and stabbed the young boy to death. And from all indications, from what we have heard so far, it was since then that George decided that he probably needed to defend himself at every point in time. So he also had something on him, a knife of some sort. I have no idea. Now, as far as we know, it's not verified stories. We have been told, whatever it is that we have asked and we have gotten is what we're telling you. So we're just trying to build a background around it. Now, nobody is saying that George is right to have had an altercation at the store. Nobody is saying he's right to have gotten into a fight at the store. Nobody is saying he's right to have brandished a weapon, because that's what a knife is. It's a weapon. Nobody is saying he's right. But this weapon is not a firearm. There's a very, very clear distinction. And it's a knife, not a machete. So, what is the extension of a knife from your hand? Maximum, even if it's a jackknife, the big ones that that soldiers use and all that. That's about the length of it. And then you have 12 cops around you, highly trained cops, and they had firearms. It's a huge body. A bullet is that tiny. So there's several parts of your body that they could have shot you to disarm you, but that didn't happen. George was shot 5 times. Now, we've seen a video, another citizen who happened to be somewhere in the vicinity, who actually took a video recording of the incident. And it was just absolute chance that happened. Now, prior to that, there have been quite a lot of reports about George himself. People have said he had 32 convictions. They have tried to paint him as a thug and all whatnot. Now, how do you label somebody a thug at the age of 27 and he has no convictions? We found out rather weird. So now, if he was not a thug, then that means he was not experienced enough to be able to take on 12 policemen. There's so many questions that you can ask around it. But we're going to play the video for you now. And I'm sure we're going to play that video 2-3 times somewhere along the line, because some of the comments that have been coming in and all that, some of the questions that have been asked, I know we'll have to refer to that video a few times. But we're going to play that video now. And please, viewer discretion is advised. It is a gruesome video, in my opinion. We'll be right back shortly after this.
Fauci.
Wow. So 4 shots initially fired. If you take a close look at the video, you will see that first shot, second shot, he was being spun around. Maybe he was flailing his arms because he probably had, still had the weapon in his hand. But 1, 2, 3, 4, and George was on the ground. Then it counts to 3. 3 seconds in between. The 5th shot. I'm no soldier, but I do know one thing, because I do have quite a few friends who are in the military, some who are, policemen as well. When it comes to the rules of engagement, somebody's on the floor and does not holding a firearm. You've shot him already. And then you put a 5th bullet in him. Really? A 5th bullet? Now, I won't overemphasize it. What I'll just do is, I'll play that video again. We'll be right back.
Fauci.
After the shooting, the emergency services were called. And according to the reports that they gave, that they tried to revive the young man, hoping to save his life, but he passed on. I can't say exactly how his family, his friends, his neighbors, how they will feel at this point in time. The trauma of seeing somebody that they know, who they all woke up in the morning, said hello, said hi, probably made plans for later in the day. And then some of them watched him being gunned down, surrounded by 12 policemen, right in his front garden. I can't tell you the type of trauma that will do to anybody. Least of all, his immediate family and circle of really close friends. Pretty devastating. Pretty devastating. And like I said earlier on, it's pretty shocking because in the Republic of Ireland, it's almost unheard of. How many times do you even see the armed police? How many? You rarely see them. Once in a while, yes, you will see the odd, policeman in civilian, clothes, mufti as they call it, and you see a small sidearm, hanging from his waist. Sometimes you will see the special squad with a special, truck or van, not van, the jeeps. You see them wearing, their black uniforms and then holding their assault rifles and all that. But they don't even look at you. They just smile at you and walk past you. You probably have more guns visibly at the airports in Ireland than on the streets where the police are concerned. It's a rarity. It's not like the United States where everybody has a gun and cops are carrying guns and everything. You don't see that. In the United Kingdom, you probably have much more. Yes, forget the population, but you actually have much more guns visibly seen than in the Republic of Ireland. How many people get killed in the Republic of Ireland? Now, of course, because it's so rare for you to hear of somebody being shot and killed in the Republic of Ireland, there's almost no data for that. We saw one old newspaper article dated 2005, where it says in the past 15 years in the Republic of Ireland, only 3 people have been shot by the police. 3. It's that rare of an occurrence. But then it is especially much more rare in the Republic of Ireland for somebody of African descent. A lot of young kids, of course, they go around, they do all sorts of stuff. But like I said earlier on, they're kids. Kids will always misbehave. They will always do all sorts of stuff. That happens. Anywhere else in the world, it happens. Even in the native countries where they come from, it happens. Now, they are born in the Republic of Ireland. They get mixed with kids who are native Irish. They believe that they are Irish citizens as well. They have the same rights as the white Irish, the brown Irish, the whatever color Irish, because they're Irish. And they live their lives like normal kids would. Move around in packs and hordes, ride bicycles, ride all sorts of, those small mechanisms that we run around with. And then when they get to, when they go past the teenage years, they still hang out together, they still do their stuff together. You rarely hear of the issue of racism amongst that generation. Those guys below the age of 30. Rarely, they interact pretty well. So that's why it has been a big, massive shocker for practically all of them living in W15 area, and they've all come out en masse to cry out over the issue of George being shot and killed by the police. Now, we're going to go on a short commercial break. When we do get back, we're going to put up a video or two of some politicians who have made comments about what has happened. And then we'll also talk about the inquiry that's going on, the probes, the statements that have been made by the police themselves, and whatever else that we have available to us at this point in time. We'll be back shortly after this. Hello, good evening, folks. If you're just joining us, you're welcome to another edition of Just Banter. It's the first of 2021. We are prayed that we're going to be having a very exciting show, a very exciting opener when it comes to the next edition of Just Banter. As a matter of fact, we didn't even have one planned for today, except for the gruesome news that we got, the unfortunate and rather devastating shooting of a young Nigerian man in the Republic of Ireland called George Nkencho. George was shot 5 times in his front garden. In attendance were 12 officers of the Angara Sikana. A lot of people have asked a lot of questions. I can tell policemen around one young man holding a knife, and so many shots were fired. 5. That's a lot of shots to fire. I personally, as an individual, if I had shots beside me, I'd be frozen. So I can't imagine 5 shots ringing where I am standing, or in whatever vicinity that I am. I'll be petrified. And 5 shots. And there were 12 policemen in attendance. 12 highly trained policemen. And a young man was shot and he was killed. Now, there's been a lot of stuff that has been thrown into the social media, online, trying to disparage the young man. Some said he was a thug. Some said he had 32 convictions and all whatnot. A lot of people in his neighborhood who had probably some racist inclinations had tried to say that he was not Irish, so he didn't have a right to even think that he had a right in the Republic of Ireland. We have been told not to put up some of those comments because a lot of racial tensions have risen over this issue, and we are not supposed to inflame the situation. We're supposed to just try to appeal to people to try their best possible to coordinate themselves in a peaceful manner, because they said they're going to protest, and try and protest quiet. Non-violent protests are much more effective than violent ones, because what you'll be doing is you'll be sending the wrong message rather than the actual message which you want to send. So we are also not going to be aiding anybody in taking those type of decisions or those type of steps by putting up some of those racist comments so that we don't inflame the situation further. But a lot of stuff has been said, a lot of stuff has come up. But even the police has come out to say that George did not have those convictions. We're going to be asking one of our producers to put that up shortly. But before they do that, before they put up anything about George, we're going to be listening to 1 or 2 Irish politicians who have had something to say about this issue and how nasty it is. We'll be right back.
Yesterday in Dublin, a black man was shot dead by 12 police officers in Blanchardstown. The 12 police officers who attended this scene should have been sacked on the spot, and whoever the senior officer was in the operation should be removed from his job immediately. The problem is, and there's no other way of looking at this, in my history of Ireland, and the history of Ireland as I know it, never before has a young white man been murdered for wielding a knife, regardless of how dangerous he might have seemed. There were 12 officers there. If one of those officers wasn't able to unarm that man from his knife, then he's not fit for his job. And if the other 11 stood by and watched while...
Now, those were comments by Kevin Starkey. He was the former presidential aspirant in the last presidential elections in the Republic of Ireland. Very deep statements, very deep points that he made about never having heard of a white man being shot, regardless of what the situation was, him being a thug or whatever, on the streets of Ireland, much less in front of his own home. Now, like we said earlier on, a lot has been said about George. George, being a young man, would have had his issues. According to some of the reports that we heard, which was much earlier, and which we have mentioned as well, we did say that George was traumatized as a young man, or as a kid. He was about 15 at that particular point in time, where he and a friend of his had a terrible experience. That experience led to the death of his friend. His friend was stabbed to death by the father of the other kids, which they had an altercation with. Was that the reason why George was moving around with a knife? If let's assume that he was moving around with a knife, but he did have a knife with him that day. Whether it was a butter knife or not, it's like we said, we have no idea just yet. It's still speculation because that particular item will be in the evidence right now. And of course, they're not going to bring it out except it is the right time for them to put it in front of us for us to see and for them to let us know whatever their own side of the story is much further. But George was walking. He wasn't running. And they followed him home. Now, a young man that was walking and not running, that means there was no sign of agitation. In my own opinion, from what I could see, I don't know. I mean, you viewers are out there, you can make your comments and all that. And, we could all be the judge of what we saw. He was actually walking. He wasn't trotting. He wasn't running. He wasn't jogging. He was just walking, more like a stroll. And then those cars were following, those police cars. And George walked to the front of his house. Now, we don't have any footage of what transpired in front of his house before, the shots went off. The only thing we know is that shots did go off. But like I said earlier on, the questions I'm still asking is this. For a young man who had no prior convictions, how come it took 12 policemen to shoot him down? Not disarm him, shoot him down. Sometimes, as a people, we look at issues like Black Lives Matter and all that, and some people feel that sometimes it's a bit of a stretch. I don't think it's a bit of a stretch. I'm fortunate enough to move around quite a bit. I travel quite a fair bit. And I do have some nasty experiences when it comes to law enforcement, the harassment, the intimidation. A lot of them actually simply because I hold a Nigerian passport. Because once you just see the Nigerian passport, it just ticks off something in them. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a case of being Nigerian means that there's absolutely something wrong with you. Nigerians, we're over 200 million people. We're the largest nation of Black people in the world. And we have seen the contributions of Nigerians in every country that they reside. In the Republic of Ireland, you have tons of doctors who are Nigerians, nurses, carers, people that have been on the front line during this entire pandemic. Some of them have lost their lives. You have them also in the United Kingdom. You have them also in the United States. You have them in Canada. They're engineers, aerospace engineers, all sorts of stuff. You have them in every sphere of endeavor. And they're highly trained professionals, and there are quite a bit of them that are very successful. So why would it be a case of when it comes to you being Nigerian, then there's an issue, then there's a lot of agitation, then there's a lot of worry, then there's a lot of property. Now, I'm not going to be talking simply because I'm Nigerian on this George Nkencho issue. I'm going to be talking about the issue of Black lives truly being a case of they matter. But when you want to start talking of Black Lives Matter, we also have to look at ourselves and look at how we treat ourselves. Now, I'm not talking of you interacting with the next man. I'm talking of you looking inwards and dealing with yourself, dealing with your own demons and trying to sort out whatever it is that you have. That is an issue. If George was truly a traumatized young man, the community should have rallied around him. the community should have tried their best to get George to get proper treatment. It shouldn't have ended this way. Africans are family-oriented people. We get up, we look after our community, we look after our people. Nigeria, for instance, Nigerians living in diaspora have sent more money home to Nigeria than the revenue that was generated from oil. So how come we don't look after ourselves? How did it happen that George got to this point? But this is not an indictment on anybody. It's not an indictment on any particular group of people or anything. I'm just talking. I'm just trying to process the entire thing because I was inundated with a lot of information about this entire George issue. And it broke my heart that a family would have to endure what they're enduring right now. He didn't die of the COVID-19 pandemic. He didn't die because he had cancer. He died because there was a misunderstanding between himself and the police. And then he was shot. The saddest part of it all was this young man had no prior criminal record, no prior convictions, nothing. Nothing. Now, as much as I say the Irish police are some of the best in the world, there's some people that have alternate perspectives when it comes to the Irish police. We're going to be taking a video from an Irish politician and hear what she has to say when it comes to the issue of Judge Nkencho being shot fatally and killed on the 30th of December, right in front of his house. We'll be right back.
I want to say that whatever happened at the shop in Hartstown that day, obviously is very serious. You know, a worker being assaulted, people being very frightened. But the real issue here is that somebody, a young man, has been fatally shot by the GARDAI when that should not have happened. It should be possible for GARDAI to be trained to disarm somebody in such a situation. And having watched, you know, all of the videos that are going around, which are obviously unfortunate, but at least we have some indication of what did the truth. And the reality is that George had his back turned when the first shots were fired. And people are quite entitled to ask the GARDAI for answers. We must have a fair, fully public and transparent investigation into those events and into George's death.
Correct.
And it should be an investigation that it involves the community. I don't have any faith in GSOC. I don't have any faith in the Garda Ombudsman, to be honest with you, to have an independent investigation. The reason I don't have any faith is because of very recent events that have happened in Ireland, where the GARDAI, people have to be reminded, and this includes the entire working class community in Blanchardstown. Don't forget the role that the GARDAI have played against working class people in general. They do not represent the interests of ordinary people. As we saw when the water charges happened, you know, GARDAI were very quick to be there, but they're not there when you phone them when you're in trouble.
Correct.
As we found with
Coppinger, she's a politician in the Republic of Ireland. Her constituency, I believe, is in that Dublin 15 area as well. And she has stated that she has no trust in the Anga Desikana. Now, of course, anywhere else in the world, people will tell you that some of them trust the police, some of them don't. So you would have people say that as well. But are there elements of truth to what she's saying? Is it a case of you can't trust the police anywhere you are? They form the community, and that those communities that they form seem impenetrable. Is it a case of police lives matter much more than citizens? Because if you don't have citizens, then who are you policing? And I think that's a very strong question that should be asked generally, because the police have a job. The same way the doctors have a job, the lawyers have a job, the jurists have a job. The businessman has his own job. The van driver has his own job. That's the same way everybody has their own responsibilities that they have to live up to. The police should not be superior to the people that they are policing, because their designation is actually to protect and to serve. It's almost a universal saying when it comes to the police force. So how come it is a case of they protect themselves, so much so that when there's seemingly a crime committed by a policeman, he hardly ever gets indicted? Even the authorities seem to protect that policeman. I am still shell-shocked because, like I said, my regard for the Irish police is extremely high, because I've seen them at work several times and I've seen them handle issues. So this has been an unbelievable situation, to say the very least. Quite unbelievable. But a young man will be killed on the 30th of December for wielding a knife. Should he have held a knife? No. Should he have had that level of altercation? No. Should things have escalated to that extent? No, definitely not. Definitely not. It's a shame that this would have happened to such a young man at this point in time. His mother, I don't know what she'll be feeling. His family, I don't know what they'll be feeling. His friends, I don't know what they'll be feeling. The entire community, I don't know what they'll be feeling. Dublin 15 is arguably the largest constituency when it comes to the different areas in Dublin, in County Dublin. Now, the funny thing is, the former Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, now the Taoiseach, represents Dublin 15 in the Dáil. We are not sure he has made any comments so far. Nobody has said anything from him as far as I know. And it's a shock because he's also a minority. He would have had his own experiences growing up in the Republic of Ireland that he might not have found, savory. So I'm sure he should be able to relate with some of these types of issues. And we would have thought that by now he would have stood up, he would have come out, he would have said something. At least. Because he represents the people in that community. But hey, we haven't heard anything yet. And you have to wonder why. It is one of the most culturally diverse areas in the Republic of Ireland. You would have thought that there would be a very high level of tolerance within the residents of Dublin 15 and even the police in terms of relationships with the community. So that brings about another question. What is the true level of interaction, assimilation between the police and the people, residents of Dublin 15? Because like I said, vast variance in terms of cultures, backgrounds, people coming from everywhere, very culturally rich, very culturally diverse. And there are several ways to look at this entire story. But the one conclusion that cannot be taken away is the fact that the life of that young man was snuffed out. Am I supposed to give a personal opinion? No. Will I give a personal opinion? Yes. Did he need to shoot him 5 times? They didn't need to. These guys are trained to remove a pin with a bullet 300, 400 yards away. And then they're in close proximity with this guy. In the parlance of people that use guns and all whatnot, even in movies, they tell you that's point blank range. Point blank. But that shocker is that one that I can't get over. 4 shots. 4. There's the camera. 4 shots. Bang, bang, bang. And then there's a pause. 3 seconds. And then bang. If you watch a lot of movies, what does that sound like to you? It's terrible. That is really, 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 really terrible. We're going to be praying for George Nkencho's family. We're going to be praying for his friends. We're going to be praying that they get the strength to be able to move on from this. You can never move on from the death of a loved one. I can tell you that from personal experience. So it's easy to say. It's probably unachievable. What we will be employing the communities that are involved in all of this, all the stakeholders, major and minor stakeholders, to do is keep your eye on the ball. Don't lose focus. Don't go the route of being violent. Peaceful protests would always work. Mahatma Gandhi, who was the father of peaceful protests, once said, if you sit on the floor, fold your arms and fold your legs, only an animal will come at you. And we're going to see the results, the way India was able to handle colonialism. So please, as much as you can, peaceful protests. I know the people of George's generation are going to be a bit hot-blooded over this issue at this point in time. So they are the ones that we're actually appealing to at this point in time to please maintain cool heads. Try and get this issue resolved as peacefully as possible so that there'll be no excuse for it to ever happen again. Like I stated earlier on, when the show was just starting, Ireland is one of the most beautiful countries you can ever visit. Lush landscape, various types of activities, extremely rich history. And they themselves, as a people, have suffered repression for hundreds of years. So they can relate with the people being repressed. So the only way this can continue to happen is if people do not get up and say something. I remind the Irish people that this is not in their nature. Not at all. The Irish people are warm, welcoming, loving people, probably because of their own experience. So this is extremely damaging for their reputation. It's extremely damaging for their foreign policy. It's extremely damaging for their international image. So I'm sure they're going to look deeply into this and they're going to work on it. All the officers that were present at that point in time, they have to be looked into. There has to be a thorough, deep investigation into what truly happened. And let justice take its course. Like they say, justice is blind. So whether you're a policeman or not, if you've broken the law, you're probably going to have to face the law. We're sorry that this could happen. And I'm at a loss for words. I just don't know what else to say over this issue. Several comments have come in. People have said a few things about the issue of George being shot. Somebody is saying that for him to have had a knife, says he wasn't feeling safe before the incident. So now, in relation to that statement made by Folake, I would say that there have been several incidents where young people of African descent have formed different types of groups. A lot of them claiming that they are being bullied by their white Irish counterparts, and that led them into forming those types of groups. Is that response right? I don't think so. But for somebody to be carrying a knife means he wasn't feeling safe. And for him not to feel safe, there must have been a prior incident that led to that. And that's probably why he did have the knife on him. Yes, Dublin 15 can be a volatile place at times. But for him to have been carrying a knife, then the level of trauma he must have suffered must have been very, very deep. And that's why I asked earlier on, how did the African community get to this point where one of their own was ill and they didn't take care of him? That is not who we are as a people. So I believe that has to be looked into. There are so many social care workers amongst the African community, quite a few that I know personally myself. And I'm sure some of them are actually watching this at this point in time. So maybe they need to ask themselves a few questions as well and try to find out why they are not reaching out to people, not just professionally, but at least on a social level, and trying to find out, how are you doing? What has been happening to you? Why do you do the things you do? It's unfortunate for that young man to have been gunned down like that. It didn't need to happen. Oh yeah, okay. Well, so then Falake again says, we used to be family oriented, we have become individualized, which is actually very true. We don't look out for each other anymore. We need to start doing that. The reason why the Indians and the Pakistanis are as successful as they are in whichever countries that they find themselves is because they come together, regardless of whatever their differences are, and they chart a common goal, and they all work towards it to try to achieve that common goal. It's extremely important for us to start doing that as a community, as a people as well. I'm not saying non-integration. What I'm saying is integration to a point of acceptance, a point of respect. That's what I mean. Put your money into those businesses in your community, whether they're African businesses or not, but they're in your community. Put some money into those businesses. Buy from local retailers, buy from local stores, buy from local producers, hire local services. The more your community has fluidity, the easier it is for your community to develop. As a matter of fact, we're looking at accelerated development within that community. So you all need to start working together. You all need to start looking at each other and saying, you know what? Without you, there's no me. Without me, there's no you. That's about the only way we're going to be able to move forward as a people. Okay, somebody is saying 5 shots is murder, period. Well, Mustafa, I don't know what to say to that, but we'll let justice prevail. We'll let the investigations take their due course. We will wait and see what it is that they have to say. And hopefully it will be fair and just. But I don't think there's any way around it where there'll be 12 cops and there are 5 shots. One man. Just one man. Before we go, we're going to be playing that video once again, because I actually want you to watch it again so that you get the true impact of what it is that's making us so sad today on FormerRadio.com, Just Banter, the African community in Ireland, the African community in the UK as well. Because everybody has got up in solidarity and they're like, why? So we'll play the video again.
Fauci.
So when something happens to somebody, people need to stop throwing the wrong narrative and just trying to be able to say something. It's unfair, it's unjust. And remember, it could happen to you too. We all have to be reminded that the young man had no prior convictions. So he was more or less a law-abiding citizen. Now, several newspapers have come out, with publications on the matter. Even GARDAI has come out. They made a statement as regards whether George had any prior convictions or not, and he didn't have any. We'll show you some of those publications and some of those statements. We'll be back. So before we go, we'd like once again to commiserate with the family of George Nkencho, his sister, his mother, his family, his friends, and all the parties concerned. Like we said, please try and keep a cool head so that we can manage this particular situation adequately so that this type of thing never happens again. The Yorubas have a saying, yes, people will die, but people should not die a horrible death. People should not die an unjust death. People should not die by being shot 5 times. It's terrible. Pretty terrible. We'd like to say thank you to all of you for watching and for joining us. Before we go, our usual social messages that we always try to give, because we have not given up on our campaign against rape. And unfortunately, our last show before the new year came in was also related to something like that, which was the issue of rape. A young boy, Don Davis, was raped in Nigeria in his secondary school from one boy. I think it's about 10 or 11 years old. A very traumatic experience for the young boy. And his mother is feeling insecure. His mother is feeling threatened. His mother has been going through a lot of trauma. I'm sure just as bad as a young child. So we will continue to fight against it. We will continue to say no to rape, or we'll continue to say there's no excuse to rape. Please join us. Make sure you use either of the hashtags or both of them, no excuse or no to rape, to say something. Let people hear your voice. You don't have to do any other thing. Just tweet it, or just make a post about it on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whichever social media platform that you use. And please say something against the issue of rape. We need to protect our families, women, children, and the elderly, who are also very vulnerable when it comes to the issue of rape. It's also of pandemic proportions. Please do something. Tweet, make a post, use the hashtags, no excuse, no to rape. Now remember that COVID-19 is very real. It's taking the world by storm. Different variants are coming out in different parts of the world, so it's becoming a bit scarier. So wash your hands as often as possible. Wear a face mask wherever you are, so far as a public place, either in a public cab, public bus, a store, whatever. just wear a mask. It's the safest thing to do. Even those vaccines are probably not going to be able to protect you. It's the masks that are going to protect you. So please, as much as possible, do that. Wash your hands, keep a safe distance. The recommended distance initially was 2 meters, but now I think it's been reduced to 1 meter because it just does not seem feasible to be able to maintain 2 meters separation between yourself and the next person wherever you are. Too many people in the world, is it? Well, I don't know, but not enough space. So in order to try to keep this in check and under control, and for us to go back to near normal, because we can never live our normal lives anymore, from all indications, we all need to put our hands together, participate, and try our best to make sure that we keep safe and would not allow this infection to spread. We all need to live as long as we can. If you're going to die, a natural death, not from diseases or viruses and stuff like that. We all pray for the best and we all hope that something great happens in 2021 to stop this issue of COVID-19. We're going to have our official first show on the 7th, and we have a very special guest who's going to be coming on, and he's going to be talking about something that you all like to see or you like to hear. Everybody loves the entertainment world, so we're bringing somebody from the entertainment world who's going to come and give us an indication of what's going to be happening when it comes to entertainment on the African continent. It's one of the biggest sectors, one of the most thriving sectors come 2021, 2020, 2023 from the projections that we have seen so far. So if you're interested in something like that, you might want to listen to this guy and see how you can get on the supply chain in the entertainment sector in Africa. You all have a great night, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks for watching. Thanks for taking out the time. Good night.